Tonight I want you to imagine something a little unusual, little whimsical, and yet rooted in the quiet, sometimes lonely history of the Victorian age. So, take a moment now, dim your lights, settle yourself under your blanket, feel the pillow beneath your head, soft and supportive. Let your breath slow. Let your body sink a little deeper into rest. And if this gentle journey helps you unwind, you can always tap like or subscribe, only if it feels right, only if it feels easy. No pressure at all. And if you'd like, share in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love imagining these stories drifting across time zones, finding you in your own quiet hour of night, or perhaps even in the stillness of morning. Now picture this. What if you woke up one morning and you were not yourself as you know, but instead a Victorian spinster, a woman unmarried, independent yet scrutinized, caught in a time when such a life was considered both peculiar and peculiar punishment. Through the next chapters, we'll walk slowly through her days, her rooms, her routines, her teas, her loneliness, her quiet joys, her strange freedoms, sometimes humorous, sometimes sad, always soothing. So, let us begin. You open your eyes, and at first all you notice is the heaviness of the bedding. Not the light duvets of today, but layers upon layers. Sheets, quilts, coverlets, and perhaps even a counterpane embroidered by some aunt years before. The mattress beneath you is firm, stuffed with horsehair or feathers. The pillow is smaller than you're used to, but the lace edging scratches your cheek just a little. And then you realize you're not in your own room. Instead, you're in a Victorian chamber. The wallpaper is patterned with faded flowers, slightly peeling in the corners. A washstand sits nearby, holding a porcelain basin filled with cool water. On the chair is your gown for the day, neatly folded, long, high-collared, buttoned up to the throat. You stand and the wooden floor creaks. The chill nips at your bare feet. The fire in the grate is only embers. There is no central heating, no switch for warmth. If you wish to banish the cold, you must ring for the maid or set to work yourself, poking the coals, coaxing a reluctant flame. You walk toward the mirror, and the face that looks back at you is not quite your own. It is older perhaps than you expected. A spinster, as Victorians called it. Not married, not in the bustle of children or husband, but alone. Independent, yes, but not always admired. Her hair is pinned up firmly, though a little silver glints among the strands. Her collar is fastened tight, her bodice plain but respectable. And so begins the day, a spinster's day. No husband's breakfast to prepare, no children's cries in the hall. Instead, the slow unfolding of solitary ritual, a careful washing, a stiff corset tied by your own hand, the layering of petticoats, the endless buttons to fasten. Each sound, the rustle of fabric, the soft splash of water, the faint crackle of the fire, grounds you in this world. Outside, a carriage clatters by on the cobbled street. A neighbour's rooster crows. Somewhere children are walking to school in their heavy boots, their chatter rising and falling. You listen, quietly, and for a moment you wonder, what path has brought you here? Why are you a spinster? Was it choice? Was it fate? Was it the loss of someone you loved long ago? The Victorians had many words for women like you. Maiden, old maid, gentlewoman. Some were whispered with pity, others with respect. To be unmarried meant freedom from the duties of wifehood, but also a life of suspicion, as though independence was something to be explained away. You sit at your small table where a teapot waits steaming faintly, a single cup, a single plate, a single slice of bread and butter. The meal is quiet, modest, unhurried. You sip your tea, strong and dark, and watch the steam curl upward like a small ghost. This, then, is your new life. A day ahead of reading, perhaps, of sewing, of calling upon acquaintances who may or may not welcome your presence. A day of restraint, but also of choice. For you are beholden to none, and in that small truth lies a kind of power. And as you step into this day, the lace collar scratching faintly at your throat, you wonder what adventures, quiet though they may be, await. The morning light filters through thin lace curtains, soft and pale, turning the room into a wash of quiet brightness. The kind of light that seems to hold back sound, making everything hushed. You sit at your small wooden table where a simple breakfast has been laid, a slice of bread with a smear of butter, a pot of dark tea, and perhaps, if fortune or thrift has allowed, a small boiled egg, its shell faintly steaming. You spread the butter slowly, the knife scraping gently across the bread. No chatter fills the room, no clinking of other spoons against other cups. The only sound is your own, the faint tick of the clock on the mantel, the occasional creak of the chair beneath you, the kettle sighing as it cools. The life of a Victorian spinster is measured in small, careful rituals like this, each morning much the same, yet each with its own tiny variations. Sometimes the bread is fresh, sometimes stale, sometimes the tea is strong, sometimes weak. But always you alone sit at this table, gazing out the window at a world that hums busily without you. Outside, the street is alive in its own quiet way. A milkman clatters by, his cartwheels rattling over the stones. A group of boys in caps and scuffed boots march towards school, their voices rising in playful argument. A woman sweeps her doorstep, her broom brushing rhythmically, keeping her doorway tidy as neighbours watch from behind curtains. You sip your tea, and in the warmth of the cup you find a kind of comfort. It is not grand, not bustling, but it is yours. In a world where a woman's identity was often defined by her husband or children, to wake alone, to sip tea alone, to watch the world from your own quiet seat, carries a peculiar weight. To some, it might feel like emptiness. To you, it may feel like space, room to breathe, room to watch. The Victorians were fascinated by spinsters, sometimes mocking, sometimes pitying, sometimes fearful of what a woman might become if she lived without the steadying influence of a husband. Caricatures in newspapers painted the spinster as a bitter aunt, with a cat at her feet and a frown etched deep on her face. Yet the reality was far softer, far more ordinary. Often it was exactly this: a slice of bread, a cup of tea, a quiet gaze out the window at the morning bustle. You take another bite, chew slowly. The bread is firm, the butter cool, your egg cools in its shell. And as you watch the milkman move on, his cart fading around the corner, you wonder again at the balance of solitude. Was it chosen, or was it given to you by fate? Does the world see it as loss, while you feel it as calm? The lace curtain shifts in a faint breeze, and the room breathes with you. The breakfast ends as quietly as it began. You set down your cup, the spoon resting softly against the saucer. The clock ticks on, each second as patient as the last. Now, the day lies before you. Perhaps sewing, perhaps a letter to write, perhaps a walk in the park if the weather holds, a day without obligations to anyone but yourself. And though the world may see it as small, to you it stretches vast, filled with quiet possibilities. And so, you rise, smooth your skirts, and let the morning unfold step by careful step. The breakfast tray is cleared away, the tea leaves resting damp at the bottom of the pot, and now comes one of the longest, slowest rituals of a Victorian woman's day, the act of dressing. You might think it a simple matter: slip into a gown, fasten a few buttons, and be done. But in the Victorian world, clothing was an entire architecture, built layer by layer, each piece meant to shape not just the body but the image of respectability. The spinster, without a lady's maid at her beck and call, often managed this herself. You stand before the mirror, where pale daylight catches the glass, and begin. First, the chemise, soft cotton against your skin, a garment hidden but essential. Then the stockings, pulled carefully up and fastened with garters that sometimes bite into the thigh. Next, the corset. Oh, the corset, stiff with whalebone, waiting to be laced tight. You reach behind awkwardly, tugging at the ribbons, drawing them until your breath shortens, your waist pinches, and your posture stiffens into the proper upright figure society demands. On top of this, the petticoats, 1, 2, sometimes 3, depending on the season. Their layers rustle as you move, making each step a whisper of fabric. Then the gown itself, plain but neatly kept, with buttons running all the way from throat to hem. The buttons seem endless, each one demanding patience, each one small but stubborn. It takes time, and sometimes you sigh, wondering why fashion must be so precise when life itself feels so broad and uncertain. Over this come smaller details, the collar pinned neatly, the cuffs smoothed, perhaps a brooch fastened at the throat, and last, the hair. Already pinned once, it must now be repinned, coiled into a bun, smoothed with oil to tame flyaway strands. A spinster could not afford to appear careless. Respectability, after all, was her shield in a society quick to judge. The ritual is slow, deliberate. Each movement makes you aware of yourself, your breathing, your patience, your body wrapped tighter than you'd like. And yet, there is something almost meditative in it. The tug of ribbons, the fastening of buttons, the soft swish of skirts. Like prayer, it is repetition that grounds you, even as it constrains. When at last you step back, you see a woman transformed. Not simply a solitary figure, but someone who could walk the streets respectably, call upon a neighbour, or sit with her sewing in the parlour without raising suspicion. Clothes, in the Victorian age, were more than garments. They were defences, silent explanations, shields against whispers. And so you smooth your skirts, take one last look in the mirror, and turn toward the day. Outside, the sun has lifted higher, casting light across the rooftops. Somewhere, a church bell tolls the hour. You're dressed, you are proper, you are ready. Not for an adventure filled with noise or crowds, but for the quiet, measured life that stretches ahead of you. A life where even the simple act of fastening buttons becomes part of the story. Once the gown is fastened, the hair neatly pinned, and the room set to order, the day truly begins. For a Victorian spinster, the morning hours were often filled with quiet industry. Tasks that were modest, repetitive, but somehow steadying. You sit by the window where the light is best, and draw your sewing basket closer. Inside, neat rows of thread gleam faintly, blues, creams, and the deep browns that match the hems of everyday gowns. The basket carries its own small history, scissors dulled by years of use, a thimble polished smooth by countless fingers, scraps of fabric saved for mending. Nothing is wasted, not in this world. Every button is reused, every strip of cloth repurposed, every sock darned until it seems more repair than original fabric. The needle slips through your fingers, steady, patient. You begin with a tear in a sleeve, the thread sliding in and out with a quiet rhythm. It is almost like breathing, stitch, pull, stitch, pull. The fabric rustles softly with each movement, and the sound of the outside world fades into background hum. A cart rattles by, a child calls in the street, a sparrow chatters at the window, but your focus narrows to the thread in your hand. There is comfort in sewing. It is a task that asks little but time, and in return it gives the small satisfaction of repair, of making whole what was torn. For a spinster, it is also economy, mending her own garments rather than paying others, proving to the world that she's industrious, thrifty, respectable. In a society quick to judge, even a neat hem was a kind of armour. When the stitching is done, you fold the fabric neatly aside and turn to your writing desk. A small place by the wall with an ink pot, quill, and sheets of creamy paper. Here begins the second quiet labour of the morning, letter writing. Correspondence for the Victorian spinster is both lifeline and performance. Letters connect her to family far away, to friends in other towns, even to acquaintances who may or may not truly care. Each word must be chosen carefully, for letters were often shared, read aloud, even passed from hand to hand. A misplaced phrase could stir gossip, and gossip was a danger sharper than any cane. You dip the quill into ink, the faint scratch filling the silence. The words come slowly at first. My dear cousin, I trust this letter finds you in good health. The opening as formal as custom requires. Then the steady flow of small details, the weather, the mending done, the sermon at church, the state of the garden. Nothing dramatic, nothing alarming, simply the gentle hum of a quiet life. There is a peculiar weight to these letters. They're more than communication, they're evidence. Proof to others that you live as you ought, that your days are proper, that your solitude is not scandal but serenity. Each stroke of ink is a reassurance, to them and perhaps to yourself, that your life, though quiet, is not empty. When the last word is written, you blot the page carefully, fold it into a neat rectangle and seal it with wax. The letter will be sent on the afternoon post, carried away by the clatter of hooves and the hands of strangers until it reaches the desk of someone who may smile faintly at your words before setting them aside. The morning passes in this way, needles and ink, mending and writing, the spinster's small labours shaping her day. Outside, the world hurries on, but inside, the room hums with a slower rhythm, one of patience, thrift, and small acts of creation. And as you sit back, folding your hands for a moment's rest, you feel both the weight and the lightness of this life. No one to command you, no one to share it with. Just the steady whisper of thread through fabric, the scratch of ink on paper, the quiet company of your own thoughts. The letters are sealed, the mending folded neatly away, and the house, though still, begins to feel close about you. It is time to step outside to take your walk. For the Victorian spinster, a walk was not only exercise but statement, a declaration of presence in a world that so often tried to make her invisible. You draw on your bonnet, its ribbons tied neatly beneath your chin, and take up your gloves, slightly worn at the fingertips but brushed clean. The door closes softly behind you, and immediately the air greets you, cool, crisp, carrying the faint smell of coal smoke and damp earth. The street hums with a dozen small sounds, the clatter of wheels, the shuffle of boots, the clip-clop of a horse pulling its cart. Each step on the cobblestones is measured, deliberate. You know eyes will follow. For in this world, a woman walking alone is never simply a woman walking alone. She is observed, weighed, judged. Neighbours peer from behind curtains, their gaze quick but sharp. Children skip past, glancing up curiously. Even the shopkeepers at their doorways give you that look, a mixture of politeness and quiet curiosity, as though they ask silently why alone. But you walk with your head held steady. Respectability is your armour. The plainness of your gown, the neatness of your bonnet, the firmness of your steps, all speak silently for you. A spinster could not afford extravagance or disorder. Her defence lay in her composure. You pause at the greengrocer's stall. Apples, slightly bruised but bright with autumn colour, lie in wooden crates. You run your gloved hand lightly over them, choosing carefully. The grocer greets you with courtesy, but his glance lingers, not rudely, but with that flicker of curiosity again. You purchase 2 apples and a small bundle of carrots, tucking them into your basket. Simple meals will follow, soup perhaps, or a pie stretched thin but filling. Moving on, you pass the butcher's, where sharp smells of raw meat cut the air. Boys shout in the street, chasing one another with sticks. A washerwoman leans from an upstairs window, pinning shirts to a line. The world is bustling, yet you move through it like a quiet island. Noticed, yes, but never quite part of the stream. At the park, you take a seat on a bench beneath bare-limbed trees. The gravel crunches as passers-by stroll past. Families, couples, children with hoops, each absorbed in their own worlds. You sit, hands folded, gazing at the pond where ducks paddle lazily. Here, in public, the spinster feels both exposed and free. Exposed to whispers, yes, to the assumption that she is lonely, unwanted, somehow incomplete. Yet free, too, for no husband pulls her arm, no child tugs her skirts. She may sit as long as she wishes, rise when she chooses, let her thoughts wander without interruption, and wander they do. You find yourself imagining the lives around you. That young wife with her bonnet askew, how many sleepless nights has she spent rocking her infant? That gentleman pacing briskly, what work troubles his brow so deeply? And the girl with her hoop, will she too grow to be a wife or a spinster like you? The possibilities ripple outward like circles in the pond. When at last the church clock chimes the hour, you rise, smoothing your skirts, and turn back toward home. The basket at your arm is heavier now, the street still alive with sound. And though you are keenly aware of every glance upon you, you walk with steady dignity, each step a quiet assertion that you belong here, in this street, in this town, in this world, whether or not society approves. The door closes behind you once more, shutting out the stairs, enclosing you in the still hush of your own rooms. Alone again, yes, but also unobserved, free to breathe in the rhythm of your own solitude. The door clicks softly shut behind you, muffling the voices of the street. In an instant, the clamour of carts and children fades into the hush of your own small domain. The familiar scent of coal, a trace of soap, and the faint sweetness of apples from your basket drift into the air. You set the produce on the worn wooden table, the surface polished smooth from years of use, and untie your bonnet, laying it gently aside. Here in the kitchen, everything feels smaller, calmer, more certain. A narrow hearth glows faintly with embers, promising warmth if coaxed. The shelves hold jars of flour, oats, a few tins, nothing extravagant, yet enough. A single kettle rests ready, its metal dulled but faithful. The silence is not heavy, it is companionable, like a shawl wrapped about your shoulders. You peel the carrots slowly, the thin strips falling in curling ribbons to the floor. The knife glints softly in the lamplight. Each movement is careful, unhurried. You cut the vegetables into small chunks, dropping them into a small pot with water drawn from the jug. A pinch of salt, a scrap of onion from yesterday. Simple things, yet they begin to smell rich, comforting, as the pot settles onto the hob. The steam rises in delicate clouds, misting the small window above the sink. Outside, you hear the faintest rattle of a cart, the bark of a dog, then nothing. Inside, the only sounds are the gentle simmer of broth and the ticking of the mantel clock, each second steady, soothing, almost like a heartbeat. While the stew bubbles, you slice one of the apples. Its flesh is pale, faintly tart, the knife sliding easily. You lay the slices on a small plate set beside a crust of bread saved from the morning. It is not a feast, not the spread of a grand dining table, but it is yours. Every morsel chosen, prepared, and placed with care. At last you ladle the soup into a bowl. Steam arises, carrying the earthy smell of carrots, onions, and broth. You settle into your chair, smoothing your skirt beneath you, folding your hands for a moment before lifting the spoon. The first sip is warm, simple, steadying. Food not to impress, but to sustain, to comfort. And in that moment, you realize how different this is from the meals of others. No husband waits with his demands. No children chatter with endless needs. The silence is thick, yes, but also gentle. It allows you to savor, to think, to breathe. Each mouthful becomes an act of presence, here, now, alive. As you break the bread, dipping it into the broth, your thoughts wander to the households around you. Families gathered at long tables, quarrelsome voices, laughter, commands barked. Children sent for more coal or more bread. Compared to that, your supper might seem lonely. Yet compared to that, your supper might also seem free. The apple slices are crisp sweet in their modest way, cleansing the salt of the soup from your tongue. You chew slowly, thoughtfully, as the room around you darkens with evening. The lamplight glows a little warmer, shadows lengthening on the walls. Outside, the church bell tolls, carrying across the roofs, reminding the town that another day has folded gently into night. You set your spoon aside, the bowl nearly empty, your hunger quietly eased. You sit for a moment longer, hands folded, listening to the faint crackle of the fire. It is in these small pauses that life feels fullest. Not in grand events, but in simple meals, eaten in silence with no one to disturb the flow of your thoughts. At last you rise, tidying the dishes, rinsing the bowl and spoon, setting them to dry. The kitchen feels orderly again, as though nothing has happened. Yet you feel a quiet warmth, not just from the food, but from the steady rhythm of a life that, though overlooked, holds its own dignity, its own peace. The night is drawing in, shadows stretching across the floor. You pull the curtains close, shutting out the world, and let the hush of your little home wrap around you once more. The meal has been cleared, the last apple slice tasted, and the lamplight now throws long, golden shadows across the room. Outside, the world softens into darkness. Only the faint call of a night bird and the distant sound of wheels remind you that life continues beyond these walls. Here, in your small space, the evening unfolds gently, without haste. You reach for your sewing basket, its lid worn smooth from years of use. Inside, spools of thread rest like tiny treasures. Cream, grey, a pale blue that once brightened a gown's hem. Needles glint faintly, tucked into a little cushion waiting for your hand. The fabric you mend is simple, a sleeve with its seam coming loose, a stocking needing reinforcement at the heel. Nothing grand, nothing decorative, just the steady work of keeping garments alive a little longer. Each stitch is slow, deliberate. The thread whispers through the fabric, pulling tight, binding one life's wear to another's careful repair. There is a quiet satisfaction in it, a sense of usefulness. For a woman without husband or children, usefulness is currency. It keeps you steady, reminds you that you are not idle, that your hours matter. The clock ticks on, the fire shifts, crackling softly, and you find your thoughts drifting, as they often do, into the spaces between stitches. What if you had married? Would you now be mending not only your own sleeves, but a husband's waistcoat, a child's frock? Would there be noise around you, chatter, laughter, perhaps quarrels? Would your hands still find these same rhythms, or would they have been forever hurried by demands that never pause? The fabric grows warm beneath your fingers, the needle pricks neat, the seam restored. You fold the garment carefully and set it aside, content in the small triumph. Then, as the house deepens into night silence, you take up another ritual, your diary. The little book lies waiting on the table, its cover worn soft at the edges. You open it, the pages faintly smelling of ink and age. Your pen scratches slowly, dipping into the inkwell, forming steady lines. The words are not dramatic, just a simple record of the day, the weather, the visit to market, the taste of your soup, the satisfaction of quiet work. Yet there is something tender in the act. A diary does not judge, does not gossip. It is a companion that holds your thoughts without interruption, a mirror that listens in silence. You pause, pen resting between your fingers, and listen. Outside, a cart rumbles faintly, then fades. The air smells faintly of soot, mixed with the softer scent of fabric and wood smoke inside. The room hums with stillness. You add one last line, close the book, and tuck it away. Before bed, you pull your shawl tighter and sit a moment by the fire, letting its warmth soak into your hands. The glow flickers on the mantel, casting your shadow faintly on the wall. This is the hour when many households still bustle, children tucked into beds, husbands finishing a late supper, servants clattering in kitchens. But here, in this quiet home, the rhythm is yours alone, and there is peace in that. No one calls your name, no one interrupts your thoughts. The evening is yours, stitched, written, and sealed in silence. The fire in the sitting room has dwindled to a soft glow, its light flickering like the last sighs of the day. You rise from your chair, smoothing your skirts, and take the small lamp in your hand. Its flame dances, warm but delicate, as you move slowly toward the staircase. Each step creaks faintly underfoot, wood softened by years of tread, though now only yours marks the passage. The house feels different at night, quieter, deeper. Shadows stretch across the narrow hallway, the air carrying a cool stillness. Behind you, the sitting room closes into darkness. Ahead, the sanctuary of your bedroom waits. You enter, placing the lamp upon the small bedside table. The room is modest, a narrow bed neatly made, its quilt stitched with patterns that recall your mother's hand, a dresser with a mirror whose silver backing has dulled with age, and a small chest at the foot of the bed filled with linens carefully folded. Everything is in order. Everything speaks of care. You untie the ribbons of your gown slowly, the fabric slipping from your shoulders in soft folds. Each layer, each fastening is undone with steady hands. The corset unlaced, the skirts lifted away, leaving only the plainest of nightdresses, soft cotton, worn smooth against the skin. In this moment there is a relief, almost a freedom, as the weight of the day's attire falls aside. At the dresser you brush your hair. The bristles whisper through each strand, the sound mingling with the faint hiss of the lamp's flame. Your reflection looks back, lined by time, softened by the glow. Not the face of the girl you once were, but a face calm, composed, touched with dignity. You pause, setting the brush down, and let the silence hold you. Then, as you do each night, you kneel briefly by the bed. The words of prayer are quiet, almost murmured, more habit than fervour, yet they steady you. A wish for health, for peace, for those you remember fondly, and perhaps for yourself most of all. You rise, pulling back the quilt, and slip into the bed's cool sheets. The lamp's flame quivers, then softens as you turn down the wick. Darkness settles, but not absolute. Shadows shift faintly, the outline of the window barely visible, the soft shape of the quilt pulled up to your chin. You listen. The house breathes in silence. Outside, the faintest hoot of an owl carries across the night. Somewhere distant, a carriage rattles over cobblestones. And then stillness again, deep and soothing. As you close your eyes, your body relaxes into the bed, the day's labours drifting away like smoke. You think briefly of the walk, the meal, the stitches, the diary entry, all small, ordinary things. Yet together, they form a life, steady and unbroken, lived quietly but with care. Sleep edges nearer, soft as the quilt against your cheek, drawing you gently into its embrace. And so the day ends. Not with fanfare, not with noise, but with a hush, the quiet dignity of rest. The first sound that wakes you is not an alarm nor the clamour of children's voices, but the faint cry of a milkman calling down the street. His cartwheels scrape along the cobbles, followed by the low moo of the cow he sometimes brings to sell fresh milk. You stir slowly, reluctant to break the cocoon of warmth. The bedroom is dim, touched only by the softest glow filtering through thin curtains. Outside, the world is just beginning to stir. You hear the faint clatter of buckets, a neighbour's door closing, the muffled bark of a dog somewhere farther off. The rhythm of the town returns, never hurried but steady. You sit up, quilt slipping from your shoulders, the air cool against your skin. The simple cotton nightdress rustles as you move to the window. Drawing back the curtain, you look out upon rooftops still damp from dew. Smoke curls faintly from chimneys, mingling with the pale light of dawn. The street below is quiet, only one or two figures hurrying on early errands. At the washstand, you pour water from the jug into the basin. It splashes softly, clear and cold. You dip your hands, splash your face, the chill waking you fully. The soap is plain, its scent faintly medicinal, but its lather feels clean, refreshing. You pat your face dry with the worn towel, its edges fraying but still serviceable. Dressing is a process, though slower now than in youth. The chemise first, then the stays, drawn snug but not cruelly tight. Then petticoat, skirt, blouse, and finally the bodice. Each layer ties you not only into the garments, but into the structure of your place in this world. The gown is dark, unadorned, yet pressed and respectable. Respectability, after all, is your armour. In the kitchen, the faint smell of yesterday's fire lingers. You set kindling in the grate, coaxing the embers back to life with patient breaths until the flames catch. The kettle rests on top, its iron body blackened from years of use. Soon it begins to murmur, then whistle softly, filling the air with the promise of warmth. Breakfast is simple, a slice of bread toasted carefully by the fire, spread with a scrape of butter if any remains. Perhaps a small egg, boiled gently, and always tea, dark, steadying, poured into a chipped but beloved cup. You sit at the small table, hands cupped around the warmth, and gaze at the quiet room. The morning meal is taken alone, yet in that aloneness lies a certain peace. No chatter interrupts, no demands press. The tea steams, the bread crunches softly, and you are free to let your mind wander wherever it pleases. After breakfast, you tidy carefully, sweeping crumbs, rinsing the cup, setting everything in its place. The morning hours stretch ahead, waiting to be filled with tasks. Mending, cleaning, perhaps a letter to a cousin, or a walk to fetch supplies. The day is yours to shape, even if others would say it is empty. You pause by the window once more, watching the sun rise higher, brightening the street. Children now trot off to school, carrying slates under their arms. A baker's boy hurries past with a basket, the smell of warm bread trailing behind him. And you, the spinster, stand quietly, unremarked yet present, watching life unfold like a play from the wings. In this moment, with tea warming your hands and the day just beginning, you feel both apart and included. The world may not see you fully, yet you are here, awake, breathing, moving forward into another day, with all its small labours and quiet satisfactions. The breakfast things are cleared, the kettle set aside, and the room now carries that soft hush of a morning turning into day. On the small writing desk near the window, your papers lie waiting, a neat stack of envelopes, a bottle of ink, and a pen whose nib is slightly worn from use. The diary of last night sits tucked away, but this morning is not for private thoughts. This morning is for letters, the lifeline between you and the world outside. You settle into the chair, pulling your shawl more closely about your shoulders, and dip the pen into the ink. The first sheet of paper feels smooth, faintly rough at the edges, handmade. You begin slowly, deliberately. My dear cousin, I hope this letter finds you in good health. The words are careful, never rushed. You recount small things, the weather, the walk you took yesterday, the taste of the apples from the greengrocer, the mending you completed. These may seem insignificant, yet they are the fabric of your days, and to those far away, they may offer a glimpse of comfort, a sense of your continued presence. You pause often, pen held above the page, listening to the faint tick of the clock, the scratch of the nib when you continue. A cart rattles past outside, and for a moment you imagine the letter's journey, folded, sealed, carried to the post office, riding in a leather satchel on a mail coach through towns and fields, until at last it rests in another's hands. Perhaps your cousin will read it at a busy breakfast table, or in a quiet corner after the children are asleep. Perhaps they will smile faintly at your words, touched by the steady rhythm of your life. Another letter follows, this one to a friend in the next town. Your tone shifts, less formal, more intimate. You tell of the small details that make you laugh, of a child's shout in the street that reminded you of younger days, of the strange way your neighbour waters her plants even when rain pours down. It is a kind of companionship, these shared observations. The letter carries not only news but warmth, bridging the distance that solitude can widen. You seal the envelopes carefully with wax, pressing the stamp gently until it cools. The little pile of letters feels like treasure, precious and fragile. You place them neatly in your basket, ready for the walk to the post office later. For a moment you lean back in the chair, gazing out the window. The street is livelier now. Children's voices rise and fall as they pass. A milkman's cry drifts faintly, and the black sweep of a chimney sweep's brush arcs against the pale morning sky. Yet within your room there is stillness, broken only by the faint scent of ink and the sight of letters waiting for their journey. Letters are your tether. They remind you that while you live much of your life alone, you are not forgotten. Your voice, inked on paper, travels beyond these walls, beyond this quiet street, carrying with it proof that you're here, that you matter, that your days, simple as they are, deserve to be told, and in return, soon enough, replies will come. An envelope slipped into your hand, the thrill of recognition in the handwriting on its face. The words will reassure, amuse, connect. They will remind you that though your life is quiet, it is not entirely cut off. For now, though, the letters sit ready, like little vessels filled with fragments of yourself, waiting to sail out into the wider world. You rise, shawl gathered, basket at your side, and glance once more at the calm room before stepping into the day's next chapter. The letters rest carefully in your basket, their edges pressed neat, their wax seals shining faintly in the morning light. Each envelope feels almost alive, carrying not only words but a trace of yourself, as though you folded a part of your own presence inside. With shawl wrapped snug about your shoulders, you open the door and step once more onto the cobbled street. The morning has grown busier since your first glance from the window. Carts roll steadily along, horses snorting and stamping as they pull their burdens. Shopkeepers sweep their thresholds, tossing soapy water into gutters that run with suds. The air is cool but carries the faint familiar scent of coal smoke rising from a dozen chimneys. Your steps are careful, deliberate, each one accompanied by the soft tap of your shoes on stone. A neighbour nods politely as you pass, another pretends not to notice, though you feel her eyes lingering just long enough to wonder. You hold your head steady, the letters in your basket steady you too, a reminder that you are not walking alone but accompanied by purpose. At the corner the post office comes into view, a modest building, its red brick darkened by soot, its windows etched faintly with dust. Yet within, it hums with activity. As you step inside, the smell greets you first: paper, ink, and the faint musk of worn leather satchels. The floor creaks underfoot, worn smooth by countless visitors. Behind the counter, clerks move briskly, sorting letters into neat piles, stamping them with practiced rhythm. Each sound, the thud of a stamp, the shuffle of envelopes, the snap of twine, feels almost like a heartbeat, steady and sure. A boy darts in and out, carrying bundles to and fro, his cap askew, his boots scuffed but quick. You join the small line, letters clutched in your gloved hand. Ahead of you, a merchant sends invoices bound for London. Behind, a woman posts a letter to her son at sea, her voice soft with worry as she hands it over. When at last it is your turn, you place your letters gently on the counter. The clerk glances at you politely, weighing them quickly, his ink-stained fingers pressing stamps with efficient care. And then, with a motion so simple it seems almost invisible, your letters disappear, swept into a pile, ready to join the great river of words that flows endlessly across towns and counties, carrying fragments of lives to distant hands. You watch them go, and though you know they will not vanish, but travel faithfully, there is always a pang. It is as if part of you has slipped into that pile, now out of your keeping. Stepping outside once more, you draw a breath of the cool air. The basket feels lighter, yet your spirit steadier. You imagine the letter's journey, loaded into a coach, bumping along muddy roads, passing hedgerows and inns, until at last they arrive to be read by familiar eyes. Perhaps in some distant parlour your cousin will smile, or your friend will laugh, or someone will simply feel warmed by the knowledge that you thought of them. The walk home is gentler. With your errand complete, you allow yourself to pause at a shop window, gazing at the array of ribbons, bonnets, or books on display. You do not linger long, it would not do to draw too much attention, but for a moment you let your mind wander, imagining how those items might look, how they might feel, how they belong to worlds of wealth or frivolity that you do not inhabit, yet can observe from a quiet distance. By the time you reach your door, the morning is nearly done. The letters are gone, but in their absence you feel a thread stretching outward, binding you invisibly to those who will receive them. And in a few days, perhaps, the postman will return the favour, slipping a new envelope into your hand, reminding you that though your days are quiet, they echo far beyond these walls. The latch clicks softly as you step back into the stillness of your home. Outside, the town hums with trade and chatter, but here, within these walls, time moves more slowly, like a stream that does not rush but flows in steady ripples. You set aside your shawl and empty basket, feeling the weight of the morning slip from your shoulders as you prepare for the small duties awaiting you. The hearth is your first companion. Its fire has grown weak since the morning, embers sighing under a faint ash blanket. With deliberate care you stoop to stir them, the poker making a faint metallic whisper. A log placed gently on top sparks back life, sending little orange flames licking upward, their crackle filling the silence with a comforting rhythm. The warmth begins to spread, as if the house itself exhales after holding its breath. Next comes the dusting. With a soft cloth in hand, you move slowly from one surface to another, trailing your fingers over shelves and mantels. Each stroke gathers a thin veil of dust, each flick of the cloth restoring a faint gleam. The objects themselves seem to watch you, a vase gifted long ago, its glaze still catching the light, a row of books whose spines wear the weight of your quiet evenings, a clock that ticks patiently, never hurried, never late. You pause to listen to its beat, steady as a pulse, grounding you in the present. The wooden floor creaks under your steps as you sweep. The bristles whisper along the boards, pulling small specks into tidy piles. Outside, faint footsteps pass along the street, but you remain anchored here, in your rhythm. The broom's sound is almost hypnotic. Swish, swish, pause, gather. A dance you've done countless times, yet always soothing, always steadying. Laundry is next. In a shallow tub, water glimmers faintly, cool at first but soon warmed by the kettle you pour in. The steam rises soft and ghost-like, filling the air with a faint mineral tang. Linen pieces wait folded in a basket. A nightdress, few handkerchiefs, small items that need careful tending. You dip your hands into the warm water, the sensation both bracing and tender, and begin to scrub gently, rhythmically. The fabric whispers beneath your fingers, suds foaming lightly, carrying away the faint marks of days past. You rinse, you wring, you hang. On the line near the window, the cloth catches the light, pale banners swaying ever so slightly with the draught. As the hours move on, you pause often, not rushing, never straining. Tasks unfold slowly, each with its own quiet satisfaction. The kitchen table receives a wipe, the cupboard doors a gentle polish. Even the small brass candlesticks gleam anew after your cloth passes over them. Each object, each surface seems to respond gratefully, as though the house itself grows lighter with every touch of care. At midday you allow yourself a rest. A simple meal, perhaps bread with butter, a slice of cheese, a cup of tea steaming gently, is laid out on a plate. The flavours are modest, but they comfort you, filling not just the body but the mind with calm steadiness. You chew slowly, gazing through the window at the street beyond, where children's laughter drifts faintly upward and a cart rattles lazily by. And when the plate is cleared, you return again to the small rituals of order, folding linens, smoothing the coverlet on your bed, adjusting the chair cushions. Each action may seem small, yet together they weave a tapestry of quiet industry, keeping the space around you balanced, welcoming, serene. By late afternoon, the house is still once more, clean, ordered, its air fresher, its surfaces gleaming faintly in the soft light. You sit by the hearth again, hands folded loosely in your lap, and feel the gentle weight of your labours settle around you. Not heavy, but like a shawl laid across the shoulders. The day has been shaped by your hands, and though it may look ordinary to any outsider, within you it feels steady, certain, complete. The flames flicker softly, the kettle hums once more, and you allow yourself a long breath, knowing that the house is tended, and in tending it, you have tended yourself. The light of the afternoon softens, slipping slowly into that in-between hush, where day prepares to bow out and evening leans in, gentle but insistent. You light a single lamp, its wick catching with a faint hiss before blooming into a steady glow. Shadows lengthen across the room, but the circle of warm light gathers you close, wrapping you in its tender radius. Beside you rests a basket of yarns, spools of thread, and a cushion bristling with pins and needles. The basket is not large, but it is steady, familiar, as much a part of your life as the chair you sit upon. You reach in, fingers brushing against the soft twist of wool, the smoother strands of cotton, the comforting weight of tools well used. You choose a piece, perhaps a shawl in progress, its fabric growing row by row like the pages of a slow, deliberate story. The knitting needles, slim and polished from years of touch, rest cool against your palms. With a practiced motion you begin, one stitch looping over another, click, pause, pull, release. The sound is faint but steady, a rhythm so quiet that it becomes a kind of music, heard more in the heart than the ear. The yarn slips through your fingers like a soft current, the tension neither too tight nor too slack, just balanced. Each stitch is a small victory, a tiny order imposed upon chaos. Outside, the world may bustle with noise, voices raised in laughter, a cart clattering over cobblestones, a dog barking in the distance. But here, in your small sphere of lamplight, there is only calm industry, as if time itself has slowed to match your pace. Needlework, in its way, is more than labour. It is meditation, prayer, memory. As the fabric grows, you recall the hands that once taught you, perhaps a mother's patient guidance, a sister's encouragement, the quiet approval of another spinster who showed you the way. The motions now flow without thought, but within them lives the echo of every woman who stitched before you. Sometimes your eyes wander from the work to the small objects around you, the clock ticking faithfully, the fire shifting with a sigh, the faint gleam of your teacup waiting on the side table. Then, gently, your gaze returns to the threads, pulling you back into their steady embrace. Needlework is not only useful but symbolic. Each shawl, each handkerchief, each tidy mend to a frayed sleeve is a way of shaping the world around you, of keeping it whole. In a society that may not grant you titles, estates, or voices in its councils, you claim your own quiet authority, one of order, of care, of creation. No one may speak of it in great books or public lectures, but here, in your lap, lies a testament to patience, resilience, and beauty. From time to time you pause. You sip your tea, its warmth spreading through you. You look out the window where the sky has grown deeper, the last edge of daylight slipping away into dusky blue. Perhaps you notice the faint figure of a lamplighter passing in the street, his pole lifting to coax new flames into the night. Each lamp, one by one, joins the stars above, a constellation both earthly and celestial, guiding wanderers home. You return to your work and the rows lengthen. Your hands know what to do, even if your mind wanders elsewhere, to memories of childhood, to dreams not spoken aloud, to hopes small but steady. In this weaving of wool and thread, you weave also your own story, each loop a word, each row a sentence, each finished piece a chapter. When at last you set the needles down, the fabric rests warm and soft across your lap. You smooth it gently, as though reassuring it that its time will come, whether as a gift, a comfort, or a piece of yourself to be kept close. The basket receives it back with quiet acceptance, and you lean into your chair feeling the comfort of tasks completed, of small labours that add up to more than they appear. The lamp hums faintly, the fire glows low, and the evening deepens around you. Your hands rest, your mind settles, and for a moment everything feels stitched together, whole, ordered, calm. The lamplight grows softer as evening settles fully around you. Outside, the street has quieted, footsteps fewer now, voices hushed, as if the whole town exhales together. The window reflects the glow from inside more clearly than anything beyond, so when you glance up, you see not the world but your own little parlour doubled in the glass, the fire, the lamp, the table, and yourself sitting quietly at its heart. Upon that table lies a small leather-bound book, its cover worn smooth from years of touch, your diary. The clasp is simple, but the act of opening it always feels like unlocking something far more private, a small chest of thoughts where your voice is free, even if it is never spoken aloud. You take it into your hands, feeling its familiar weight, and draw it open to a blank page. The pen waits in its inkwell, standing upright like a soldier. You dip the nib gently, watching the ink darken to a deep, glistening black. Then, with careful strokes, you begin to write. The scratch of the pen against paper is faint but steady, a sound that joins the clock's ticking and the fire's crackle as part of the room's quiet symphony. Your words are not dramatic, at least not by the standards of novels or newspapers. They are small observations, the weather's turn toward chill, the neighbour's remark on her garden, the memory of posting letters that morning. Yet, as you write them, they take on shape, becoming more than mere details. They are proof that the day was lived, that you were here, that your thoughts moved like a river beneath the still surface of routine. Sometimes you linger on small confessions. Perhaps you note a passing loneliness, the way it shadows even the most ordered day. Or perhaps you describe the comfort of your knitting, the satisfaction of household tasks. The page receives it all without question, holding your secrets faithfully. When you pause, your gaze drifts to a small bundle of folded papers tied with ribbon. Letters. Old ones, kept not for their novelty but for the threads they still carry. You untie the ribbon carefully, as though it might break with too much haste. The paper is yellowed, the ink slightly faded, but the words remain. One letter might be from a cousin far away telling of her bustling family. Another, from an old friend recalling a shared walk in the countryside. Each line seems to breathe with the voice of someone no longer present in the room, but here in spirit, reaching across the miles. You trace the script with your fingertip, remembering the day you first received it, the warmth it carried then and still carries now. The fire gives a soft sigh, and the room leans further into its cocoon of warmth. You sip your tea, cool now, but still pleasant. The diary lies open, pages filled with fresh words, while the letters rest nearby like companions, quiet but faithful. Together they remind you that solitude is not the same as emptiness. There are voices here, even in silence, preserved in ink and paper, woven into memory. After a while, you tuck the letters back into their ribbon, smooth the diary closed, and set the pen aside. The day's thoughts are safely captured, the correspondence safely cherished. You place them gently on the shelf, where they wait like trusted friends until the next evening's company. The lamp flickers faintly, as though reminding you of the hour. Beyond the walls, the town slumbers, and above it all the stars hold steady, unseen but ever present. You draw your shawl closer and lean back in your chair, letting the quiet of the night surround you. With diary and letters as your witness, the day finds its ending, written not only in words but in the calm that now settles over your heart. The hour grows late, though the silence makes time itself feel unhurried. The fire in the hearth has burned low, flames no longer leaping but glowing faintly, red and gold beneath a soft bed of ash. Their warmth lingers, but it is gentler now, more like the fading embrace of a day that has given all it had to give. You rise slowly from your chair, shawl gathered close, and move about the room with deliberate motions. The lamp is trimmed, its wick turned down just enough to soften the light, leaving the corners of the room touched with shadow. The clock ticks, steady as ever, marking each second with the same patient rhythm it has kept for years. Outside, the street is still, broken only by the distant clop of a horse passing late, or the faint echo of a cartwheel rattling on stone. On the small table by the window rests a worn little book, its cover plain, its pages thinned by repeated turning. A prayer book. Not a grand volume with gilt edges, but one that has accompanied you through many nights, its words as familiar as the rise and fall of your own breath. You open it, fingers lingering on the creases where favourite passages lie, and settle back into your chair. The words come softly, almost whispered, as though they were meant not for the ear but for the heart. You recite them slowly, allowing each phrase to rest within you. They're not elaborate petitions for grandeur or fortune, only simple requests for health, for patience, for kindness, for the strength to meet tomorrow with steadiness. In those quiet lines you find a companion, a rhythm that steadies the restlessness of thought. At times your lips fall still and the prayer shifts into silence. Your mind wanders, sometimes to those you wrote letters to earlier, wishing them well, picturing their homes and their faces, sometimes to memories of those no longer here, whose absence still leaves shadows across the room, and sometimes to nothing at all, just the feel of the shawl against your shoulders, the faint creak of wood as the house settles into its own rest. Your hands fold loosely, and you sit in stillness. Even without words, the silence itself feels like prayer, a communion with something larger, whether it be God, memory, or simply the night. The glow from the hearth paints the room in hushed colours, and the lamp's flame wavers ever so slightly, as if bowing to the solemnity of the hour. Eventually you close the book, pressing its cover shut with the same gentle care you would give to a letter or a keepsake. You place it back on the table, its presence steady, waiting for the next evening. A final glance at the fire shows only a faint glow now, ready to yield to the coolness of night. You stir the embers once, carefully, then leave them to rest. Before retreating upstairs, you pause at the window. The street below is nearly invisible, shadows wrapped around every corner. Yet above, the sky is dotted with faint stars, pinpricks of light that seem to mirror the lamps along the street, now guttering low. For a moment you feel both small and infinite, a single thread in a fabric too vast to imagine, yet still held, still seen. You draw the curtains closed, shielding the room from the night, and carry the shawl tighter around yourself as you climb the stairs. The air grows cooler, the boards creaking softly beneath your steps. Each sound is familiar, each shadow a friend, for they are all part of the house you have tended, the life you have shaped. At your bedside you kneel briefly, whispering one last word of thanks, for the day, for the quiet, for the small mercies that thread themselves invisibly through ordinary hours. Then you rise, smoothing the coverlet, preparing the bed for rest. The night is deep now, but not heavy. It feels more like a vast blanket being drawn across the sky. one that invites rather than oppresses. And as you slip into bed, the pillow cool against your cheek, the final thought is not of loneliness, but of stillness, a trust that tomorrow will come, steady as the ticking of the clock, steady as the glow of embers fading into dawn. The first light of dawn brushes against the curtains, so faint at first that it seems almost hesitant, like a visitor unsure if it should knock. The shadows in the room soften, giving way to pale gold that grows stronger with each passing minute. The silence of night is still present, but it has thinned, replaced by the distant stirrings of a waking street. A cartwheel groaning over cobblestones, a bird calling out from a nearby eave, the faint metallic clang of a door being unlatched. You rise slowly, drawing the coverlet back and feeling the cool air touch your skin. The house is hushed, but alive in its own way. The floor creaks as you step across it, familiar and unthreatening, as though it simply acknowledges your presence. With shawl gathered around your shoulders, you make your way downstairs where the hearth waits, dark and cold after its night of rest. The act of reviving it is almost ritual. You place kindling carefully, strike the match, and watch as the first flame quivers, uncertain before leaping into life. The crackle begins quietly but grows, until the fire spreads warmth across the room, casting its flickering light upon the walls. Already the day feels more hospitable, as though the house has stretched and yawned awake with you. The kitchen greets you with its plain comforts, a wooden table scrubbed but worn, shelves lined with crockery that bears the marks of years of use, a kettle dented but faithful, waiting to be filled. You fetch water, pour it in, and set it above the fire. Soon, the kettle begins its low murmur, a sound that grows steadily into a whistle, like a gentle herald of the day ahead. Breakfast is modest but sufficient. A slice of bread toasted near the fire until its edges crisp, a pat of butter melting into its surface. Perhaps a soft-boiled egg, its shell cracked carefully, steam rising in delicate curls, and of course the tea, poured steaming into your cup, its aroma curling upward, earthy and reassuring. You take a slow sip, the warmth spreading through you, anchoring you to the moment. You sit at the table, the plate before you, the window at your side. Outside, the town is stirring more fully now. A milkman's cart clinks faintly in the distance. A woman calls softly to her child, urging them along. Somewhere, a dog barks, answered by another. The world is no longer asleep, but it has not yet reached its noisy midday hum. It is the in-between, when everything feels gentler, less hurried. You spread your diary and letters aside for now, allowing yourself to simply sit and observe. The butter glistens on the bread, the egg's yolk gleams golden, the tea's surface ripples faintly as you lift the cup. Each small detail, so ordinary, becomes a kind of meditation. The simplicity is its strength. Occasionally your thoughts drift towards what the day will bring. Small tasks waiting around the house, perhaps another letter to compose, perhaps some mending or errands in the street. None of it feels urgent, but all of it gives shape to the hours, like stones laid carefully to mark a garden path. When the last crumbs are brushed from the plate and the teacup rests empty, you clear the table with the same care you give to every small act. The dishes are rinsed, dried, and returned to their places. The kettle is set aside, ready to serve again when the afternoon calls for another quiet cup. You pause for a moment, standing in the glow of the hearth, hands folded loosely, gaze resting on the table where you just sat. A new day stretches ahead, unhurried, steady, not dramatic, not filled with great events, but that perhaps is its gift. The morning is not a proclamation but a promise, that you may walk gently through the hours, shaping them with your own quiet labours, just as you shape the breakfast, the fire, the room itself. And in that shaping you find not grandeur but peace. After the dishes are put away and the hearth is steady, the air of the morning feels too fresh to ignore. You take your shawl, drape it across your shoulders, and open the back door that leads to the small garden. At once a breath of cool air greets you, touched with the scent of damp soil and faint blossoms. The garden is not grand, not the manicured grounds of some country estate, but it is yours. Quiet, enclosed, familiar. The gravel path crunches gently beneath your shoes as you step forward. Dew still clings to the blades of grass, glistening like a scattering of tiny pearls. The sun is low but climbing, its rays falling through branches, turning leaves into panes of light and shadow. Somewhere, a sparrow flutters, its wings a sudden rustle, then stills again on the fence post, watching you with a bright, steady eye. You pause by the small flower bed. The blooms are modest, marigolds perhaps, or roses that lean shyly against their stakes, but their colours hold a richness that feels almost secret, revealed only to those who look closely. You bend, touch a petal with careful fingers, and feel its softness, almost like fabric, almost like breath. Further along, a small bench waits under the shade of an old tree. You sit for a while, letting your eyes wander across the space. The garden holds no grandeur, yet in its stillness it carries something even more precious: order and life existing side by side. A bee hums lazily past. The breeze carries the faint scent of earth, mingling with the sharper tang of coal smoke drifting from a neighbour's chimney. Both scents belong to this world, the natural and the domestic, weaving together like two threads in the same cloth. When you rise, you decide to step beyond the gate onto the narrow lane that runs behind your house. The lane is quiet, flanked by hedgerows that grow a little wild, their branches reaching out as though to brush your sleeves. Birds dart in and out of the greenery, their chirps and calls weaving a song that follows your pace. The ground here is uneven, patched with stones and dirt, but you walk with careful steps, unhurried. You notice the small things that others might overlook. The way moss creeps along the edges of a stone wall, soft and green like nature's own carpet. The way a puddle left by last night's rain reflects the sky, turning a shallow dip of earth into a mirror of clouds. Even the sound of your own footsteps, steady and deliberate, feels like a rhythm, a quiet drumbeat marking your presence in the world. Sometimes a passerby greets you, a farmer driving a cart, a child skipping along with a bundle of kindling, an older woman carrying a basket of washing. Their nods and murmured greetings are brief, polite, neither too close nor too distant. In this small exchange there is a sense of belonging. You're part of the fabric of this place, not woven into its centre, but stitched into its edges, secure in your own space. As you walk, your mind wanders too. You think of the letters sent yesterday, of the diary entries written last night. You think of the tasks still waiting at home. But mostly you allow yourself to drift, letting thoughts come and go like clouds, not grasping at them, just noticing. The rhythm of walking seems to ease them, smoothing out the sharper edges, leaving only calm. When the lane bends back toward the town, you turn for home. The house appears small and steady, its windows reflecting the growing light of day. The garden gate creaks softly as you return, closing it behind you with a faint click. Once more, the gravel crunches beneath your feet and the familiar scent of your own flowers greets you. Inside, the kettle can be set on again, and the hearth stirred back to liveliness. The walk was not long, nor the garden grand, yet it has left you lighter, as though some of the stillness of earth and air has slipped quietly into your own spirit. The day stretches ahead, but for now you carry with you the memory of dew on grass, the hum of bees, and the comfort of your own careful steps on the path. The day has climbed past noon, and the sun lingers high, softening the air in the little parlour. You have finished your simple midday meal, perhaps bread with a touch of butter, perhaps a piece of fruit saved from the morning market. Now, with the dishes set aside and the room tidied, you return to your favourite corner, an armchair by the small window, where the light slants in gently across the floor. On the little table beside the chair sits a stack of books, their covers worn, their pages carrying the faint scent of paper and time. You run a hand across them, feeling the raised letters of the titles, each promising a different world, a different quiet escape. There is something almost ceremonial in the act of choosing. Which story will hold your afternoon? Which words will whisper to you in the hours of stillness? Today, you decide upon a volume of essays, the sort of reflective writing that drifts more than it demands. You open it slowly, the spine creaking faintly, the pages fanning with a soft sigh. The typeface is small but neat, each line marching with patience across the paper. You settle back into the chair, adjusting your shawl, and begin to read. The words do not rush you. They move at their own pace, measured, thoughtful, as though inviting you not just to understand, but to linger. You pause often, letting your eyes wander to the garden outside, where branches stir in the wind and clouds drift like pale ships across the sky. Each time you return to the page, the rhythm of reading feels like stepping back into a gentle stream, letting the current carry you along. Sometimes, as the sentences wind on, your mind wanders elsewhere. A phrase about nature reminds you of your own walk earlier, the dew and moss, the sparrow on the fence. Another passage about solitude makes you think of your diary, of the words you've tucked safely into its pages. These digressions are not interruptions, they're part of the reading itself, little side paths that eventually lead you back to the main trail. You shift slightly in your chair, listening to the faint crackle of the fire that burns low in the grate. The warmth seeps into your feet, the soft hum of heat balancing the cool air that creeps in through the edges of the window. Every sound in the room is small, almost hushed, the rustle of a page turning, the faint tick of a clock, the occasional chirp from outside. Together they form a lullaby of ordinary life, steady and soothing. At times, the words of the essay drift into humour, sly observations about society, about manners and small absurdities. You find yourself smiling faintly, alone but not lonely, sharing in a jest across time with an author long gone. Other times, the passages become reflective, almost melancholy, yet never heavy, more like the soft grey of a clouded sky, calm and still. Your eyes begin to grow heavier, not from boredom but from the steady rhythm of words. You place the book gently on your lap and close your eyes for a moment, letting the images it conjured drift across your thoughts. It is as though you carry both the world inside the pages and the quiet of your own little parlour, layered softly together. When you open your eyes again, the light has shifted. The sun dips lower, casting longer shadows across the floor. The book waits patiently for you to resume, but you know you may not finish it today, perhaps not even tomorrow. Books in this life are not devoured in haste. They're sipped like tea, slowly with pauses between. You close it carefully, smoothing the cover with one hand, and place it back on the small table. The afternoon has passed not with excitement, but with calm, a few hours shared with ink and thought, with voices that linger on the page. And as you rise, stretching slightly, you know that tomorrow there will be more hours to return, more words to wander through, more quiet company in the form of books. The afternoon has slipped into evening. Outside, the light begins to soften, that pale gold which slowly surrenders to grey. Inside your little home, a lamp has been lit, its glow warm and steady, spreading across the small table where your sewing basket waits. The basket is a simple one, lined with fabric, its contents neatly arranged. Spools of thread in muted colours, a small tin of needles, a pair of scissors that glint faintly, and folded pieces of fabric waiting for your hand. You settle yourself at the table, shawl tucked close around your shoulders, and open the basket. The familiar scent of linen rises faintly, mingled with the wax of the lamp. You take out a piece of work already begun, a bit of mending perhaps, a hem that has frayed, or a patch carefully aligned to blend into the fabric. In another life, in another household, sewing might be a duty rushed and burdensome. But here, in the stillness of your own room, it is something else, an act of patience, of care, of quiet rhythm. The needle gleams as you thread it, the strand of cotton slipping neatly through the eye. The first stitch is always the same, small, careful, setting the pace. Then another and another, each one neat, each one steady. Soon the cloth begins to gather its new strength beneath your hands, the fabric holding itself together where once it threatened to fall apart. There is a comfort in this small act of repair, as though in mending cloth you also mend the day, binding loose edges into something whole again. The sound is faint, almost nothing, the whisper of thread sliding through fabric, the soft click of scissors now and then, the occasional creak of the chair beneath you. Yet, In that hush, these sounds form their own music, so gentle it could almost lull one to sleep. Each stitch feels like a heartbeat, quiet, measured, steady. Sometimes, as you work, your mind drifts. You think of the woman in town who sold you this spool of thread, her shop cluttered with ribbons and lace, her voice brisk yet kind. You think of your mother, who first placed a needle in your hand and guided your small fingers through their first clumsy stitches. You think, too, of the many women across the country, across the world, who at this very hour might be sitting by their own lamps, sewing, repairing, creating, alone perhaps, yet somehow joined in this simple, timeless act. The lamp flickers softly as the oil shifts, and its glow pools across the table, catching the glint of the scissors, the curve of the basket's rim. Shadows lengthen against the walls, gentle and shifting like a quiet play staged only for you. The work in your hands continues without hurry. Each stitch takes as long as it takes. There is no need to rush. Time itself seems to loosen, to soften, until only the present remains, needle, thread, fabric, and the calm of the moment. When the task is done, or at least paused, you smooth the cloth across your lap. The mending is not perfect. Perhaps the stitches are visible, perhaps the patch is slightly uneven. But there is beauty in it nonetheless. Beauty in the care it represents, in the quiet effort of your hands. You fold it gently, place it back into the basket, and close the lid with a small, satisfying sound. The room feels deeper now, more shadowed but not lonely. The sewing has passed the hours, has carried you gently from late afternoon into evening. You rise, stretch your fingers, and place the basket back in its spot by the chair. Soon it will be time to light another lamp, to warm a little supper, to prepare for the night. But for now, the piece of the sewing lingers, like the faint trace of thread across fabric, delicate, invisible to others, yet strong enough to hold. The sewing basket is tucked away, the lamp flickers gently, and the evening air outside has grown cooler. The faint echo of distant wheels on cobblestones drifts through the window, softened by the hush of twilight. Inside, your little home is steady, the hearth glowing with low amber flames. It is time now for supper, not a feast, not an elaborate meal, but a quiet plate meant only to sustain, to comfort. You set about with the same rhythm you bring to all tasks, unhurried, thoughtful, measured. A loaf of bread is brought forth, its crust slightly firm, its inside still soft, torn gently rather than cut. There may be a small wedge of cheese, sharp in taste but mellowed by the warmth of the room. Perhaps a piece of cold meat left from yesterday, or a boiled potato saved from midday. There is no excess here, no grandeur, but there is enough, and in its simplicity there is peace. You place the food on a small plate, carrying it to the little table drawn near the hearth. The chair creaks softly as you settle into it, the plate balanced carefully before you. The flames move with slow gestures, as though they too are content with the stillness of the hour. Their glow touches the edges of the room, brightening the worn wood, casting shadows that sway gently like slow dancers on the wall. As you eat, you notice each detail, savouring not so much the taste but the calm that comes with it. The bread carries the faint warmth of the oven it was baked in. The cheese holds a tang that wakes the tongue. The potato is plain yet filling, earthy and solid. Every bite is accompanied by the soft pop of the fire, by the occasional crack of wood shifting. You pause between bites, listening, resting, allowing time itself to stretch. Your thoughts drift inwards, as they often do. You recall days when supper was livelier, shared with family, when conversation flowed easily, and laughter mingled with the clatter of cutlery. Now, the meal is quieter, yet not without companionship, for the fire keeps its own company, whispering in flames. The ticking clock speaks in steady syllables. Even your own breath, your own movements, keep you from feeling alone. There is a comfort in solitude, you remind yourself. To eat in silence is not emptiness, but a kind of reflection, a chance to notice what might otherwise be lost in chatter. The crackle of the crust as you tear the bread, the way butter softens and spreads, the faint rising curl of steam from a simple cup of tea. The tea itself, once poured, fills the air with its fragrance, familiar, grounding. You cradle the cup in your hands, feeling the warmth seep into your palms. Each sip is small, slow, almost ceremonial. The taste lingers on your tongue, carrying both the sharpness of the leaves and the comfort of routine. It is not luxury, but it is enough. And perhaps, in this small ritual, it is more than enough. By the time the plate is cleared, the hearth has burned lower. Only embers remain, glowing like small stars fallen into the grate. You sit for a while longer, gazing at them, your empty plate resting beside you. The supper is done, but the peace it brought still lingers, wrapping you in a soft stillness. When at last you rise, you tidy the plate and cup, placing them neatly where they belong. No servant will come to clear them, no hand but your own to restore the room. And yet the act itself feels grounding, another stitch in the fabric of your day. The night deepens outside, but here, inside, you carry with you the comfort of bread and tea, of firelight and quiet. Supper is over, yet the hearth still holds its glow, steady as your own heart. The dishes have been set aside, the hearth is quiet now, glowing only with faint embers that breathe their last warmth into the room. The night outside has deepened into stillness, and you feel the soft pull of the window. It stands there like an invitation, its frame pale against the dark, its glass holding the reflection of lamplight within and the mystery of moonlight beyond. You take your shawl once more, draping it across your shoulders, and approach the window. The floorboards creak gently underfoot, not in protest, but in familiar recognition of your step. You pull back the thin curtain, and at once the night greets you, cool, serene, endless. The moon hangs steady above, pale and round, its light spilling like silver across rooftops and hedges. It paints the garden in soft shades, turning leaves into shadows, and glints faintly on the damp stones of the lane. The stars are fewer here, muted by the haze of coal smoke drifting from the town, but a handful still sparkle faintly, scattered like pins of light against dark velvet. You rest your hands on the sill, feeling the cool wood beneath your palms, and lean closer. The air that slips through the small crack in the frame is sharp, tinged with earth and chimney soot. It carries the faintest of sounds, a distant dog barking, a cartwheel groaning somewhere far off, a voice fading into silence. Yet for the most part the night is hushed, almost reverent. As you gaze upward, thoughts drift, unbidden. The moon has looked upon every life, every story, every wandering soul, and now it looks upon you. How many other women, you wonder, are standing by their windows at this same moment? Some perhaps in great houses, some in tiny cottages, some across seas and continents, all of them small beneath the same vast sky, alone, yet not entirely. The thought brings a strange comfort, like being stitched into an invisible fabric of night watchers, dreamers, and quiet souls. The glass holds your reflection faintly, your shawl, your face softened by lamplight, your eyes turned outward. It is a strange doubling, as though you are both here and there, both inside in warmth and outside beneath the sky. For a moment you linger between the two, not quite belonging to either. A passing cloud veils the moon, and the garden darkens, shadows blending into shadows. Then, slowly, the light returns, brightening the edges of the hedge, touching the tops of the flowers, silvering the roof tiles. The rhythm of this, light and shadow, concealment and return, soothes the mind like breath itself. You find yourself whispering a few words, though none are meant for anyone to hear. They are not quite prayer, not quite thought, more like a hum of gratitude to the night for being what it is, endless, patient, and vast. The sound disappears into the stillness, yet in its own way it feels answered. After some time you draw the curtain gently closed. The window, the moon, the stars remain outside, but their quiet has already entered the room, settled into you like a soft echo. You return to your chair, the shawl still gathered around you, and let yourself breathe in the calm of it all. The night stretches ahead, but you carry with you the silver hush of the moon, the cool drift of air, and the reminder that even in solitude there is connection, silent, unseen, but steady as the stars. The curtain has been drawn, the moonlight tucks safely outside, and within the room, the lamplight now holds dominion. Its glow is softer than before. its flame lowered just enough to warm the air but not too bright to startle the calm. This is the hour of gentle rituals, the hour where the day folds in upon itself and prepares to become memory. On the little table beside your armchair lies the knitting basket. You lift it slowly, feeling its familiar weight, and take out the needles. The yarn rests in a neat ball, pale in colour, soft between your fingers. The first stitch comes almost automatically, the needles clicking faintly, not loud but distinct enough to weave into the silence like a lullaby. Knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. The rhythm is steady, the yarn winding itself into something new. Perhaps it will become a scarf, perhaps the beginning of a blanket, perhaps simply practice, something to keep the hands moving while the mind drifts. The needles speak their quiet language. Click, slide, loop, repeat. It is not the work itself that matters, but the way it carries time gently forward, like a small boat across still water. You glance now and then at the clock on the mantel. Its hands inch closer to the hour when sleep will call. But for now, you allow yourself to linger, each stitch marking the soft passage of minutes. The fire has dimmed into embers, their glow low and steady, almost like coals of thought themselves glowing within. After some time, you lay the knitting aside, folding the yarn carefully so it does not tangle. The basket closes with a soft rustle set back where it waits for tomorrow. Now you reach for the diary once more, the same small book that has held your confidences throughout the day. Tonight's entry need not be long. It is not a grand reflection, but a final whisper to yourself. The pen scratches softly as you write, a note of the walk in the garden, of the book you read, of the supper by the hearth. You write of the moonlight, of the cool air at the window, of the peace that settled afterward. The words do not need to be polished or elegant. They only need to exist, like footprints pressed into sand. A quiet mark that says, "I was here, today had its moments, and now it rests." The ink dries quickly, the diary closes with a faint snap, and you set it gently aside. That small ritual is complete, and with it the day feels properly closed. You rise slowly, letting the shawl slip from your shoulders, folding it across the back of the chair. The room is ready for night, the lamp lowered further, the fire left in its last glow, the house still. Each step toward bed feels softer, slower, as though your body itself understands the ceremony of rest. There is nothing grand in these acts, no audience, no applause, but they hold a meaning deeper than grandeur. They are yours. Each stitch, each word, each closing gesture is a thread in the fabric of your life, small but strong, ordinary but essential. And now, as the room sighs into quiet, and you prepare to let your eyes grow heavy, the night stretches open like a vast quilt above you. The world, with all its bustle and noise, is far away. Here, it is only you, your lamp, your bed, and the promise of dreams waiting just beyond the edge of wakefulness. The lamp burns low now, its glow a mere whisper against the darkness of the room. The air feels cooler, touched by night, but it is not unfriendly. It is the kind of coolness that invites blankets to be pulled closer, pillows to be softened under the weight of your head. The house is still, so still that the faint tick of the clock on the mantel seems louder, though not unpleasant. Each tick is steady, like a gentle heartbeat guiding you toward rest. You move slowly, carefully, as though the day itself deserves a graceful farewell. The shawl is folded neatly across the chair, the diary rests closed upon the table, and the sewing basket waits patiently for tomorrow. Each item seems content in its place, each task fulfilled for now. The room, like yourself, is ready to surrender to the hush of sleep. You draw the covers back on your bed, their fabric cool against your fingers. Sliding beneath them, you feel at once cocooned, the layers wrapping around you like a protective shell. The pillow welcomes the weight of your head, its softness rising gently to meet you. For a moment you simply lie still, listening. The silence hums with its own quiet life, the occasional settling of the house, the faint sigh of wind beyond the window, the low murmur of embers in the grate. All of it is a lullaby too subtle for words, too soft to be anything but felt. Your thoughts drift in and out, no longer sharp or insistent. They move like clouds across the sky, slow, unanchored, dissolving before they can settle. A fragment of memory here, the sparrow on the garden fence. A flash of the moon there, pale and steady. The warmth of the hearth, the sound of your own needle stitching, the taste of tea, the scratch of the pen in your diary. Each image rises, shimmers and fades, as though your mind is weaving its own patchwork of the day, sewing together small pieces into a quilt of memory. The heaviness in your eyes grows deeper, and you let it. There is no need to resist, no need to hold on to wakefulness. Sleep is not something to chase. It arrives when you make space for it, when you give it room to enter. Already you feel its edges brushing against you, like the soft hem of a curtain drawn across a window. You take one last deep breath, feeling it fill your chest, then leave you slowly, carrying with it the weight of the day. The world outside continues. Carts rolling, voices fading, the moon sailing across its dark sea. But here, within these walls, within these covers, your world has narrowed to peace. At the threshold of dreams, you linger for a moment more, hovering between wakefulness and sleep, between here and there. It is not a sharp crossing, but a drifting, like stepping from shallow water into deeper, where your feet no longer touch the ground and yet you float. And then, with the gentlest surrender, you let go. The night has settled completely now. Outside, the world lies under the hush of moon and shadow, and inside, your room is wrapped in a blanket of stillness. The lamp has been extinguished, leaving only the faintest glow from the last embers in the hearth. They pulse slowly, as though breathing, as though keeping time with your own resting heart. You lie beneath the covers, warm, cocooned, your body heavy with the softness of approaching dreams. The pillow holds you as though it has always been waiting. Around you, every object in the room seems to have gone to sleep as well. The clock ticks slower, the basket rests silently, the chair stands still. All the day's voices, movements and duties have faded into memory. Nothing remains but quiet. Your breath grows even, a slow tide rising and falling. Thoughts no longer form fully, they appear and vanish like candle smoke. Perhaps a scene of the garden returns for a moment. The dew on the grass, the sparrow on the fence, then slips away. Perhaps the memory of your sewing, or the moonlight at the window, or the comfort of tea by the fire. Each comes like a lullaby note, then dissolves back into the hush. In this space, there is no rush, no worry, no expectation, only rest. The day has ended, and with it the small labours and reflections of a Victorian spinster's quiet life. She has folded her shawl, closed her diary, and now, like you, she has surrendered to the stillness. May these moments of calm guide you gently, carrying you through the threshold of sleep and into dreams soft as velvet. Let the rhythm of her world, the footsteps on gravel, the click of knitting needles, the whisper of pages turning, become the rhythm of your own slumber, slow and steady. And if you find yourself drifting, if your eyes close before the story's last word, know that it is perfectly as it should be. The tale was never meant to end in noise, but in silence. The kind of silence that soothes, that restores, that promises a new dawn waiting quietly beyond the night. So rest now, sleep deeply, dream kindly, and if this gentle journey has eased your mind, if it has led you towards stillness, leave a little sign, a thought, a word, a whisper below, only if it feels right. For now, let the story close and let the night carry you. Good night, sweet dreamer, whispering softly, until we meet again.